Daeho stood at the window of the small transport ship, watching the crystal world of Drakmor grow larger in the dark space ahead. His hands pressed against the cold glass as he stared at the planet that would decide his fate. The world looked like a giant jewel floating in the stars, with cities that sparkled like diamonds on its surface. "Are you ready for this?" Ambassador Park Hyjin asked from behind him. Her voice was tired, and Daeho could hear the worry in it. He turned to look at her. She was a middle-aged woman with kind eyes, but those eyes had been sad ever since she learned she had to bring him to this place. "I don't think anyone could be ready for this," he said quietly. The ship shook slightly as it entered the planet's atmosphere. Through the window, Daeho could see the massive crystal towers of the capital city. They rose into the sky like frozen lightning, connected by bridges of pure energy that glowed blue and white. Flying creatures moved between the towers, dragons, but not like any dragon from Earth's old stories. These were real, and they were huge. "Remember what I told you," Park Hyjin said, sitting down next to him. "The Vorthek don't think much of humans. They think we're weak and small. Don't let them make you angry." Daeho nodded, but his stomach felt sick. He was 16 years old, an orphan from a destroyed colony world. Everyone he had ever loved was dead. Now he was supposed to represent all of humanity in some ancient alien competition. It felt like a cruel joke. The ship landed on a platform made of smooth crystal. As they walked down the ramp, Daeho felt the weight of many eyes watching him. The Vorthak who had come to meet them were enormous. Each one was at least 20 feet tall, with scales that shimmered in the light and wings that could block out the sun. Their heads were long and elegant, with intelligent eyes that seemed to see right through him. "So this is humanity's choice," one of them said. Her voice was like distant thunder, and her silver scales marked her as very old and important. "A child." "Counselor Vextara," Park Hyjin said, bowing deeply. "This is Lee Daeho, our representative for the trial of succession." The great dragon lowered her massive head to look at Daeho more closely. Her eyes were like pools of liquid starlight. "You are very small, human child. Are you sure you want to do this?" Daeho felt his heart beating fast, but he stood up straight. "Yes, ma'am." "I'm sure." A younger Vorthak with golden scales laughed. The sound was like rocks falling down a mountain. "Look at him, Counselor. He's shaking like a leaf in the wind. How can something so weak lead the galaxy?" "Prince Kolvash," Vextara said in a warning voice. "Remember our manners." But Daeho could see that even she didn't think much of him. He was used to this feeling. He had been the smallest kid in the orphanage, the one nobody picked for teams, the one who got picked on. But something inside him had always refused to give up. Even when his world was destroyed and everyone he knew died, they were led through the crystal city on a floating platform. Daeho looked down at the streets below, where more dragons moved through the air or walked on paths of light. Everything here was beautiful and strange, but also cold. The buildings were perfect, but they didn't feel like home. "The trial of succession happens every 1,000 years, Vextara explained as they flew. "When our great leader dies, representatives from all the races in our empire compete to become the new ruler. It is a great honor." "What kind of competition?" Daeho asked. "Tests of strength, wisdom, and leadership," Prince Kolvash said. "Things that a true leader must have." "I wonder how long you will last." The platform stopped at a huge building that looked like it was carved from a single piece of blue crystal. Inside, Daeho saw other beings who must be the other representatives. There was a creature made of living crystal that sparkled as it moved. Another looked like a giant octopus with purple skin and glowing eyes. A third was covered in fur and had 4 arms. All of them were bigger than Daeho. All of them looked stronger and more confident. "The human representative," one of them said when they saw him. "I heard they were desperate, but I didn't think they would send a child." "Maybe they ran out of adults," another one laughed. Daeho felt his face get hot, but he remembered what Park Hyjin had said, "Don't get angry." He reached up and touched the small pendant he wore around his neck, the only thing he had left from his parents. It was warm against his skin, and it helped him feel calmer. You will stay in the guest quarters, Vexthara said. The trials begin tomorrow. Use tonight to prepare yourself, young human. You will need all your strength. As they walked to his room, Deho noticed something strange. The building they were in was beautiful, but it felt empty somehow, and there was a sound coming from somewhere deep below, like distant crying or howling. When he asked Park Hyjin about it, she looked nervous. Those are the forbidden depths, she whispered, where they keep the dangerous creatures. Don't ask about it too much. The Vorthak don't like to talk about what's down there. That night, Deho lay in his bed staring at the ceiling. The room was nice, but the crystal walls felt cold. He could still hear the distant sounds from below, and they made him feel sad rather than scared. They sounded lonely. He thought about his homeworld, Haven 7, and how it had been destroyed in the war. He thought about his parents who had died protecting him. He thought about all the other kids at the orphanage who hadn't made it off the planet in time. I won't let you down, he whispered to the pendant. I don't know how, but I'll find a way. Outside his window, the crystal city glowed in the darkness, and somewhere far below, something called to him in a voice he couldn't quite hear. The morning sun made the crystal city shine like fire as Deho walked to the trial grounds. His stomach felt empty, but not from hunger, from fear. Around him, the other representatives looked ready for anything. The crystalline being called. Zilfin moved like flowing water, each step making musical sounds. The purple octopus creature Gorthem had tentacles that could probably crush a car. Welcome to the first trial, boomed Commander Reithkal, a massive Vorthak with scars across his dark red scales. Today we test your strength. The trial ground was a huge arena carved into the crystal mountain. Thousands of Vorthak filled the floating seats above, their wings creating shadows that moved like clouds. Deho felt very small standing in the center of it all. Each representative will face the strength stones, Commander Reithkal announced. You must move 3 stones from one side of the arena to the other. The fastest wins. Deho looked at the stones and his heart sank. Each one was as big as a house and looked like it weighed more than a ship. The other representatives were already studying them, planning their approach. Zilfin went first. The crystal being touched the first stone and somehow made it lighter. Zilfin lifted it easily and carried it across the arena. The crowd cheered. Gor to single quote, M was next. All 4 of the creature's arms wrapped around a stone, and powerful muscles bulged as it lifted the massive rock. The octopus-like being moved slowly but steadily across the arena. Then it was Deho's turn. He walked up to the first stone and put his hands on it. It was cold and rough, and it didn't move even a tiny bit when he pushed. He could hear some of the Vorthak in the crowd laughing. Come on, human, someone shouted. Show us your great strength. Deho pushed harder, putting all his weight behind it. The stone moved about an inch. He pushed again and again, his face turning red from the effort. After 10 minutes, he had moved the stone maybe 10 feet. Enough, Commander Reithkal said. The human has failed the first trial. As Deho walked back to his place, he caught sight of Ambassador Park Hyjin in the crowd. She looked sad and embarrassed. He wanted to disappear. The second trial was 3 days later. This time they were tested on wisdom and knowledge. They sat in a great library made of living crystal, where books floated in the air and words glowed on the walls. You have 1 hour, said Elder Morden, a blind Vorthak whose white scales marked him as very old. Answer these questions about leading different races across the galaxy. Deho read the first question. How would you stop a war between 2 species who have been enemies for 1,000 years? The other representatives wrote quickly, their answers filling page after page. Deho stared at the question for a long time. He thought about his own world and how the war had destroyed everything he loved. Finally, he wrote, I would ask them to tell me about their children. People who love their children the same way can't hate each other forever. And the next question was, what is the most important thing a leader needs? Again, the others wrote long answers about strength and intelligence. Deho wrote to listen. You can't help people if you don't know what they need. When the results came back, Deho had scored better than expected. Not the best, but not the worst either. Elder Morden gave him a long look with his cloudy eyes. "Interesting," answers young human, the old dragon said. "Simple, but not wrong." Prince Kolvash snorted. "Simple is right. A child's answers to adult problems." But Deho noticed that some of the other Vorthik were nodding thoughtfully at what Elder Morden had said. The third trial was about leadership. Each representative had to command a group of Vorthek soldiers in a practice battle. Deho watched the others go first, shouting orders and making battle plans. When his turn came, he stood in front of the soldiers. They were all huge with armor that gleamed and weapons that could cut through stone. They looked down at him like he was an insect. "What are your orders, human?" the squad leader asked. His voice made it clear he thought this was a waste of time. Deho looked at each soldier's face. Even though they were dragons, he could see the same things he had seen in human faces: tiredness, worry, and the desire to go home safe. "What are your names?" he asked. The soldiers looked surprised. "Our names?" the leader said. "Yes, if we're going to work together, I should know who you are." Slowly, each soldier told him their name. Then Deho asked about their families, their homes, what they were good at. Instead of giving orders, he asked for their advice. "You've been soldiers longer than I've been alive," he said. "What do you think the best plan would be?" The soldiers talked among themselves, then came up with a plan. It was better than anything Deho could have thought of. During the practice battle, they fought harder than they had for any other representative. They didn't win. The enemy team was too strong. But something had changed. The soldiers shook Deho's hand afterward, and the squad leader said, "Thank you for asking our names, young leader." That night, Deho couldn't sleep. The sounds from the Forbidden's depths seemed louder and sadder. He got up and walked to his window. In the distance, he could see the entrance to the deep levels, heavily guarded with warning signs in many languages. "What's down there?" he whispered to himself, as if in answer, he heard something that made his blood freeze. It wasn't a roar or a growl, it was crying. Something down there was crying like a lost child. Deho pressed his hand against the window. For some reason, he felt like that crying was meant for him to hear. Like whatever was down there was calling to him. The next morning, he asked Park Hyjin about the Forbidden's depths again. "Don't think about it," she said quickly. "Those creatures are too dangerous. They're kept locked up for good reason." But Deho couldn't stop thinking about the crying. It reminded him of how he had felt when he was alone in the orphanage, when everyone he loved was gone. The other representatives were getting ready for the next trial, confident and strong. Deho was still losing, still the weakest, still the one everyone laughed at, but something was growing inside him. A feeling that he was here for a reason he didn't understand yet. A feeling that the real test wasn't about strength or wisdom. It was about something else entirely. After failing 3 more trials, Deho was no longer treated like a real competitor. The other representatives ignored him completely. The Vorthik guards gave him cleaning tasks instead of letting him prepare for the next tests. He spent his days mopping crystal floors and carrying food to the real competitors. "This is embarrassing," Ambassador Park Hyjin said during one of their walks. "Maybe we should go home. You've tried your best, but this isn't working." Deho stopped walking and looked at her. "I can't go home. There is no home. Haven 7 is gone, remember?" Park Hyjin's face fell. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean ... I just don't want to see you get hurt anymore." "I'm not hurt," Deho said, even though it wasn't true. "I'm learning." "Learning what?" "I don't know yet." That afternoon, while cleaning the library, Deho met Elder Morden. The old dragon was sitting alone among the floating books, his cloudy eyes closed. "You're the human boy," Elder Morden said without opening his eyes. "Yes, sir." "I'm sorry if I'm bothering you. I can clean somewhere else." "Sit down, child. These old books have been here for thousands of years. They can wait a little longer." Deho put down his cleaning cloth and sat on the floor near the ancient dragon. Elder Morden's white scales caught the light from the crystal walls, making Him looked like he was made of moonlight. "Tell me about your people," Elder Morden said. "Humans? We're not very special. We're small and weak compared to most aliens. We don't live very long, we fight a lot, even with each other. And yet you're here." Deho thought about that. "Yes, sir. I'm here. Do you know the old stories, young human? The legends from before the Vorthak ruled the galaxy?" "No, sir." Elder Morden smiled, and for a moment he looked much younger. "There was a prophecy written in the first days of space travel. It spoke of a heartwalker, a being who could speak to all living things, who could heal the pain that makes creatures into monsters. That sounds like a fairy tale. Perhaps? But the prophecy said the heartwalker would come from the smallest and weakest race in the darkest time. They would have the power to feel what others feel, to understand what others need." Deho felt a strange tingling in his chest. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I've been watching you, child. The way you spoke to those soldiers asking their names. The way you look at the other representatives, not with fear, but with curiosity. And most interesting of all, the way you keep staring toward the Forbidden's depths." Deho's heart started beating faster. "You know about that? I know many things. I know that you hear them crying down there. And I know that you want to help them, even though everyone says they're monsters." "They don't sound like monsters," Deho said quietly. "They sound sad." Elder Morden opened his cloudy eyes and looked straight at Deho. "What if I told you that those creatures weren't always monsters? What if I told you that something happened to them, something that drove them mad with pain and loneliness?" "What kind of something?" "A poison that attacks the mind. It makes beings forget who they are, forget how to trust and love. It turns them into the very thing they fear most, alone and angry." Deho thought about his own loneliness, how it felt like a heavy weight in his chest. Is there a cure? The old stories say yes. But it would take someone who could feel their pain as their own. Someone who could touch their minds and remind them who they used to be. That night, Deho dreamed about his parents. In the dream, they were standing in their old house on Haven 7 before the war came. His father, Jin Wasiok, was fixing a broken toy with patient hands. His mother was singing while she cooked dinner. "Remember what we taught you," his father said in the dream. "The strongest thing about humans isn't our bodies or our minds, it's our hearts." "But I'm not strong," Deho said. "Everyone here is better than me." "Better at what?" his mother asked. "Better at fighting? Better at winning? Those things don't make a good leader. Then what does?" "Caring about others more than yourself," his father said. "Being brave enough to help someone even when you're scared." Deho woke up with tears on his face. He could hear the crying from the Forbidden's depths more clearly now, and it broke his heart. The next day was a rest day between trials. Most of the representatives spent it training or studying. Deho was supposed to clean the storage rooms. But instead he found himself walking toward the Forbidden's depths. The entrance was guarded by 2 Vorthak soldiers, but they were used to seeing him around the building. He was just the human servant now. Not worth paying attention to. Deho walked down the crystal stairs, going deeper into the mountain. The walls here were different, rougher, darker. And the sounds were getting louder. He reached a thick metal door with warning signs in dozens of languages. All of them said the same thing. Danger. Do not enter. Deadly creatures inside. But through the door, Deho could hear something that made his chest tight with sadness. It wasn't roaring or growling. It was whimpering like a hurt animal. Like someone who had given up hope. He put his hand on the door. It was cold and heavy, but he could feel something through it, a presence that was scared and lonely and in terrible pain. "I hear you," he whispered. "I don't know how to help yet, but I hear you." The whimpering stopped for a moment. Then, incredibly, something pushed back against the door from the other side. Not violently, but gently. Like someone trying to touch? His hand through the metal, footsteps echoed in the corridor behind him. Deho quickly ran back up the stairs, his heart pounding. But as he ran, he could still feel that gentle touch against his palm. Something down there wasn't a monster. Something down there was just like him, alone, scared, and wanting someone to care. That evening, Ambassador Park Hyjin found him staring out his window toward the forbidden steps. "You're planning something foolish," she said. "I can see it." "In your eyes, maybe," Daeho said. "But sometimes foolish is the only way to be brave." The next morning would bring another trial, another chance for him to fail in front of everyone. But Daeho was beginning to understand that the real test wasn't happening in the arena, it was happening in the depths below, where something was waiting for someone brave enough to see past the word monster to the hurt creature underneath. The morning of the sixth trial started with alarms. Red lights flashed throughout the Crystal City, and the sound of emergency horns echoed off the walls. Daeho woke up to see Vorthek soldiers flying in all directions outside his window. "What's happening?" he asked when he found Ambassador Park Hyjin in the hallway. Her face was pale. "There's been an accident in the Forbidden Steps. Some kind of containment failure. 3 creatures have escaped." Through the building's crystal walls, Daeho could see the chaos outside. Vorthek military units were setting up barriers around. At lower levels, citizens were being moved to higher parts of the city. And in the distance he could hear roaring that made his bones shake. "All representatives must stay in their quarters," announced Commander Rithkal over the buildings. "Speakers, this is for your own safety." But Daeho couldn't stay in his room. The sounds from outside weren't just angry roars, they were cries of pain and confusion. He could feel it in his chest, like his heart was being squeezed. He waited until the hallway was empty, then slipped out of his room. The building was in chaos, with Vorthek officials running back and forth. No one noticed one small human boy. Daeho made his way to the lower levels, following the sounds of distress. The crystal walls here were cracked, and emergency lights cast strange shadows. He could hear the Vorthek soldiers shouting orders to each other. "Form a containment circle around the small one. Don't let it get to the civilian areas. Use the sleep gas, but be careful, we don't want to kill it." Daeho peered around a corner and saw his first escaped creature. It was about the size of a horse with 6 legs and silver fur that sparkled in the light. It should have been beautiful, but something was wrong with it. Its eyes were wild and unfocused, and it was making sounds like a crying child. The creature was cornered by a dozen Vorthek soldiers, but it wasn't attacking them. It was cowering against the wall, shaking and whimpering. Every time a soldier moved closer, it cried louder. "Stay back," Commander Rithkal ordered. "It's unpredictable." But Daeho could see what the soldiers couldn't. The creature wasn't dangerous, it was terrified. It was like a lost puppy, scared and confused and wanting to go home. Without thinking, Daeho stepped out from his hiding place. "Human boy," Commander Rithkal shouted. "Get back, that thing is deadly." But Daeho was already walking toward the creature. He could feel its fear like a cold wind, and underneath that fear was something else, loneliness so deep it made his eyes water. "Hey there," he said softly, the way he used to talk to stray animals back on Haven 7. "It's okay. Nobody wants to hurt you." The creature turned its wild eyes toward him. For a moment, Daeho thought it might attack. But then something amazing happened. The creature's eyes became clearer, more focused. It stopped shaking. Daeho knelt down and held out his hand. "I know you're scared. I'm scared too sometimes. But you don't have to be alone." The creature took a step toward him, then another. The Vorthek soldiers raised their weapons, but Commander Rithkal held up a hand to stop them. "Don't move," he whispered. "Don't even breathe." The creature came close enough to touch. Daeho could see now that its eyes weren't wild, they were full of pain. Someone had hurt this creature, confused it, made it forget who it was supposed to be. "I'm sorry," Daeho said, and meant it. "I'm sorry someone hurt you." He reached out and gently touched the creature's head. Its fur was softer than silk and warm. The moment they touched, Daeho felt something flow between them, not words, but feelings. The creature's fear melted away, replaced by something like hope. The creature made a sound like a purr and nuzzled against Daeho's hand. Behind him, he heard gasps from the Vorthek soldiers. "Impossible," Commander Rithkal breathed. The Shimmer Beast hasn't been calm in 50 years. Shimmer Beast? Deho asked, still petting the creature. That's what we call it. It used to be a pet long ago, but the madness took it, made it violent. We had to lock it away. Deho looked into the creature's eyes and saw intelligence there, and sadness. It's not mad. It's just been alone for too long. Guardian Nextel, the warden of the Forbidden's depths, came running up with more soldiers. He was huge even for a Vorthek with black scales and worried eyes. Commander, the other two creatures have broken into the middle levels. And there's something else. The disturbance has agitated the deeper prisoners, including ... He paused, looking scared. Including the Void Serpent. Everyone went quiet. Even the Shimmer Beast pressed closer to Deho, as if seeking protection. The Void Serpent? Deho asked. The most dangerous creature in the galaxy, Guardian Nextel explained. It's been locked in the deepest level for 300 years. Nothing can calm it, nothing can control it. If it breaks free, as if summoned by his words, a sound echoed up from the depths below. It wasn't a roar or a scream. It was like the sound of the universe crying, deep and endless and full of pain, so old it had turned to rage. The building shook. Crystal walls cracked, and somewhere far below, something enormous was moving. Evacuate the city, Commander Rithkal ordered. Full emergency protocol. But Deho was still listening to that terrible sound. Like before, he could hear something the others couldn't. Under all that rage and power, there was something else. Something that reminded him of the gentle touch through the metal door. It's not angry, he said quietly. What? Guardian Nextel asked. The Void Serpent. It's not angry. It's in pain. The ground shook again, harder this time. In the distance, alarms were blaring as the evacuation began. But Deho stood up, the Shimmer Beast staying close to his side. I have to go down there, he said. Absolutely not, Commander Rithkal said. That creature has killed more beings than any other monster in known space. It's pure destruction. No, Deho said, and his voice was stronger than it had ever been. It's just the biggest victim of all. Another roar shook the building. This time, Deho was sure he could hear words in it, not words in any language. But the meaning behind words. Help, please, make it stop. The Shimmer Beast looked up at him with trusting eyes. Around them, the most powerful military force in the galaxy was preparing to fight a monster, but Deho was preparing to meet a friend who had been waiting 300 years for someone to understand. I'm coming, he whispered toward the depths. I'm coming to help. The last trial was about to begin. Not in the arena above, but in the darkness below, where the greatest test of all was waiting for a small human boy with a big heart. The evacuation alarm screamed through the Crystal City as Deho made his way to the deepest levels. The Shimmer Beast stayed close beside him, its silver fur glowing softly in the emergency lights. Behind them, he could hear Commander Rithkal shouting orders to his soldiers. Let the human go, Elder Morden's voice echoed in the corridor. The old dragon had appeared somehow, his white scales bright in the red warning lights. This is his path to walk. Elder, that creature will kill him, Guardian Nextel protested. Perhaps. Or perhaps the boy will do something none of us thought possible. Deho looked back at Elder Morden. The blind dragon nodded at him, and somehow Deho felt braver. He turned toward the stairs that led to the lowest level of the prison. Each step down felt heavier than the last. The crystal walls here were thick and scarred, built to hold the worst monsters in the galaxy. But as Deho walked deeper, he began to understand something that made his heart ache. These weren't monster cages. They were sick rooms. Every creature down here was suffering from the same thing, the mind poison that Elder Morden had told him about. They had been beautiful once, intelligent and peaceful. But something had attacked their minds, turned their thoughts dark and twisted, made them forget how to trust or love. The Shimmer Beast whimpered softly as they walked past the other cells. Through the thick metal doors, Deho could hear crying, scratching and sounds of pain. Each one made him feel sadder. They're all like you, aren't they? He said to the Shimmer Beast. They're all just lost. At the bottom of the stairs was the biggest door Deho had ever seen. It was made of the strongest metal in the galaxy, covered in warning signs and energy barriers. But even through all that protection, he could feel what was inside: pain, anger, and underneath it all, loneliness so deep it felt like falling into a dark hole. The door was already cracking. Whatever was inside had been trying to break free, and it was almost succeeding. As Deho watched, another crack appeared in the metal. "Void Serpent," he said quietly. "That's what they call you, but that's not your real name, is it?" A sound came from behind the door, not a roar this time, but something that sounded almost like surprise. Deho put his hand on the cracked metal. It was hot to the touch, but he didn't pull away. "I know you can hear me. I know you understand." The banging from inside stopped completely. "Everyone thinks you're a monster," Deho continued. "They think you want to hurt people, but I don't think that's true. I think you're just hurt and scared, and you've been alone for so long that you forgot how to be anything else." The silence stretched on. Then very softly, Deho heard something that made tears come to his eyes. Crying. Something enormous and powerful was crying like a lost child. "I know how that feels," Deho said. "I lost everyone I loved too. My parents, my friends, my whole world. Sometimes the loneliness hurts so much you want to break everything around you, just to make the pain stop." The crying got louder, and then, incredibly, words came through the door. Not spoken words, but words that appeared in Deho's mind. Weak and broken, like someone who had forgotten how to talk. "Hurts. So long. Can't remember. Who was I?" "You were someone good," Deho said firmly. "I can feel it. Deep down, under all the pain and anger, you're still good. Double quotes. No. Monster. They're right. Die a monster. No, you're not. You're sick." "But that doesn't make you evil." The door cracked wider. Soon it would break completely, and the most feared creature in the galaxy would be free. Deho should have been terrified. Instead, he felt calm. "If you break out angry, they'll fight you," he said. "They'll try to hurt you, and you'll hurt them back, and everyone will suffer. Is that what you want, don't want, but can't stop?" "The pain makes me. Then let me help you stop." The words came out before Deho really thought about them. He didn't know how to help. He was just a 16-year-old boy with no special powers, no weapons, no training, but he had something else. Something his parents had given him, something that had kept him going through the worst times of his life. He had love. The door exploded outward. Metal flew everywhere, and the Shimmer Beast pressed against Deho's legs for protection. Emergency lights failed, leaving them in almost complete darkness. Then two enormous eyes opened in the blackness. They glowed like dying stars, beautiful and terrible at the same time. As Deho's eyes adjusted, he could see the creature those eyes belonged to. The Void Serpent was massive, longer than a spaceship, with scales that seemed to absorb light. It had wings that could block out the sun, claws that could tear through mountains, and teeth like crystal daggers. It should have been the most frightening thing Deho had ever seen. Instead, all he could see was how sad those glowing eyes were. "Hello," he said quietly. "I'm Deho. What's your real name?" The great head lowered until it was level with Deho. He could feel the creature's breath, warm and smelling like starlight. Those enormous eyes studied him, and Deho felt his mind being gently touched by something ancient and powerful. "Vitharos," came the whisper in his thoughts. "My name was Vitharos. I was Guardian, protector, before the poison came." "Vitharos," Deho repeated. "That's a beautiful name." The great serpent's eyes filled with tears that sparkled like diamonds. "You're not afraid." "I'm terrified," Deho said honestly. "But I'm not afraid of you. I'm afraid of letting you stay in pain." Slowly, carefully, Deho reached out his hand toward the massive creature. Vitharos could have swallowed him whole without even trying. Instead, the great serpent lowered its head until Deho's small hand touched the scales between its eyes. The moment they touched, everything changed. Light exploded through the prison levels, not harsh emergency light, but warm, golden light that felt like sunshine. The mind poison that had tortured Vitharos for 300 years began to dissolve, burned away by something stronger than darkness. Understanding, the simple, powerful connection between two lonely souls who had found each other, Vitharos, made a sound like singing, and for the first time in centuries, the great serpent remembered who it used to be. Above them, the evacuation alarms fell silent. The other creatures in the prison stopped their crying and howling. And in the great arena where the trials had been held, every Vorthok who was watching the emergency broadcasts fell to their knees. The Heartwalker had awakened, and nothing would ever be the same. The golden light spread through the entire prison like warm water. As it touched each cell, the crying and howling stopped. Creatures that had been lost in madness for hundreds of years began to remember who they used to be. Deho stood with his hand still touching Vitharos, feeling the ancient serpent's joy flow through him like music. Around them, prison doors were opening as the healed creatures gently pushed them apart. But instead of escaping to cause chaos, they simply sat quietly, blinking in wonder at the clear thoughts in their heads. "The pain is gone," Vitharos said. And now his mental voice was strong and clear. "For the first time in 3 centuries, my mind is quiet. How do you feel?" Deho asked, like waking up from a terrible nightmare. "I remember now. I was a guardian of the peaceful worlds. I protected children and helped grow gardens that fed entire planets. The poison made me forget all of that, made me think I was only destruction." Footsteps echoed down the stairs as the Vorthok leaders came to see what had happened. Commander Rithkal led the way, his weapons ready. But he stopped in amazement when he saw the scene below. The most dangerous creatures in the galaxy were sitting calmly around a human boy, like pets around their beloved owner. The Shimmer beast was purring. A massive rock creature that had crushed buildings was carefully examining its own claws as if seeing them for the first time. A flying beast with razor wings was singing a soft, beautiful song. "Impossible, Commander." Rithkal whispered. Behind him came Counselor Vexthara, Prince Kolvash, and Elder Morden. The old dragon was smiling, but the others looked shocked. "Elder," Vexthara said, "what has happened here?" "The prophecy has been fulfilled," Elder Morden said simply. "The Heartwalker has come, just as the ancient texts promised. He has healed the poison that created our monsters." Prince Kolvash stepped forward, his golden scales catching the warm light. "But he's just a human child. How can someone so small and weak do what our greatest healers could not?" Vitharos raised his enormous head and looked at the young prince. When he spoke, his voice filled the chamber like gentle thunder. "Strength is not about size, young prince. This human boy has something your people have forgotten. The courage to see pain instead of evil, to offer love instead of fear." "You can speak?" Vexthara gasped. "I could always speak," Vitharos said sadly. "But the poison made my words come out as roars and screams. The Heartwalker has given me back my voice." More Vorthak were coming down the stairs now, the other representatives from the trials, officials from the city, even some of the soldiers who had been guarding the prison. All of them stared in wonder at the peaceful scene. "If the trials were meant to find a new leader," Deho said quietly, "then I guess they worked, but not the way anyone expected." High Patriarch Zovash arrived last, so ancient that his scales had turned silver-white with age. He was the supreme leader of the Vorthok Empire, and when he spoke, everyone listened. "Young human," he said, his voice heavy with centuries of wisdom, "you have done something we thought impossible. You have healed minds that we believed were broken forever." "How?" Deho looked around at all the powerful beings staring at him. A few weeks ago, he would have been terrified. Now he just felt tired and sad and grateful. "I listened," he said simply. "Everyone kept calling them monsters, but I listened to what they were really saying. They weren't asking to hurt anyone. They were asking for help." "And you gave it to them," High Patriarch Zolvash said. "Without weapons, without armies, without even magic. You gave them the one thing they needed most. What was that? Someone who cared?" The Patriarch looked around at the healed creatures, then back at Deho. "The trials are over. You have proven yourself to be the leader our galaxy needs. Will you accept the position? Deho was quiet for a long moment. He thought about his destroyed homeworld, about all the suffering he had seen, about how the galaxy had been ruled by fear for so long that people had forgotten how to trust each other. I'll accept, he said finally, but not as a ruler. As a helper. What do you mean? Prince Kovash asked. The galaxy doesn't need one person making all the decisions. It needs all of us working together. Humans and Vorthik and Ashkari and Morvik and everyone else, sharing ideas and helping each other. Vitharos lowered his great head so that he was eye level with Deho. You speak of the old ways, from before the Empire began, when different races worked together as friends instead of conquerors and conquered. Exactly, Deho said. We could call it the Galactic Harmony Council. Every race gets a voice. Every problem gets solved by everyone working together. And what about creatures like us? Asked the Shimmer Beast, speaking for the first time in decades. The ones you call monsters? You're not monsters, Deho said firmly. You're people who were hurt and need time to heal. We'll help you remember who you used to be and find new purposes if you want them. Vitharos made a rumbling sound that might have been laughter. I would like to grow gardens again, to help things live instead of destroying them. Then that's what you'll do. High Patriarch Zovash smiled, and for a moment he looked much younger. Very well, Heartwalker, let us begin this new age together. 1 year later, Deho stood in the same crystal city, but everything was different. The Forbidden Depths had been turned into a healing center, where creatures with mind poison came to be cured. Vitharos had indeed become a gardener again, growing food that fed entire worlds. The Shimmer Beast worked with children, teaching them that being different didn't mean being dangerous. The Galactic Harmony Council met in a great hall where every race had equal seats. Arguments still happened, but they were settled with words instead of weapons. Ambassador Park Hyjin found Deho in his garden one evening, watching the sunset through the crystal walls. Any regrets? She asked. Deho thought about his parents, about his destroyed home, about all the pain that had led him to this place. No, he said. Pain taught me how to recognize it in others. Loneliness taught me how important it is to help people feel less alone. Everything that hurt me made me better at healing others. The other races are calling you the Heartwalker now, I know. But I think everyone has a heart that can walk. They just need to remember how to use it. A small human girl ran up to them. One of the refugees from the war zones who now live safely in the Crystal City. Her name was Leungji, and she reminded Deho of himself at that age. Deho, she called. Vitharos is teaching us how to grow singing flowers. Come see. Deho smiled and took her hand. Together, they walked toward the garden where the most feared creature in the galaxy was gently showing children how to plant seeds. The galaxy had learned something important. The strongest person isn't always the biggest or the loudest, or the most frightening. Sometimes, the strongest person is the one brave enough to care.